I welcome you to our reflection on the solemnity of the Most Holy Trinity, the most ancient of all mysteries about God. God as one God, yet in three distinct persons: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This mystery can be reflected upon in two different ways. Two ways of talking about the Trinity. What in theology is called the immanent Trinity. God in his Godhead, as God is in himself, as one God, one nature, one essence, one substance, undivided, dwelling in unity, in communion. And then the second way is what is called the economic Trinity. God in his activities in the history of human salvation, in the history of humanity, as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or as Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. It is true that the term Trinity is not found in the scriptures. But of course, throughout the scriptures, we have traces of these three persons being talked about, beginning from the book of Genesis in the account of creation, especially the creation of humanity, of the human person. At the beginning, Genesis already tells us, in the beginning, God created, the Spirit hovered over the face of the earth. And God created by his word. The word that in the Gospel of John, the prologue John chapter 1, verse 1 to 18, John tells us that the word was there from the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And through him all things were created, and nothing was created that was not through him. The same Word that we see God creating. God spoke the Word, and things were created. And in the creation of man, God said, let us. That let us is referred to as, well, some say the majestic we, but also indicating that there is something just more than one person there, yet one God. Because let us make man in our own image, not images, not likenesses, in our own image and likeness. So from that beginning already, there is this aspect, this trace of the Trinity. And in the Hebrew word, the term word, dabar, also has the creative element, the creative force. So that's already one of the first traces of the Trinity in the Bible. In the visit or the encounter of Abraham with the messenger of God, we also see something that started like strangers, eventually three of them, and eventually turned to be angels and then to be God himself. Also talking about the Trinity, the trace of the Trinity. This continues. In the first reading today from the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, verse 22 to 31. We see proverb personifying wisdom. The Lord created me when his purpose first unfolded. From the beginning, before earth came into being, I was. Before anything. In the New Testament, Jesus will be seen as the wisdom of the Father, the wisdom of God. The wisdom that was there at the beginning. We already talked about the gospel, the prologue to John's gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John even went further to say that the Word became flesh, became human, became the Son of God, became the Redeemer. So we see the traces of the Trinity. But the most aspect of this was in the public ministry of Jesus. Jesus proclaimed explicitly the Father and himself implicitly as sent by the Father and the one who knows the will of the Father and does the will of the Father. And not just that. He reveals that the Father and himself are one. And also reveals that promise the Spirit. The Spirit that would proceed from the Father and the Son. Even at the beginning of his public ministry, at his baptism, the Trinity was present. The Father was being baptized. The voice of the Son was being baptized. Jesus was being baptized. The voice of the Father was heard. And the Spirit descended upon him like a dove. Already at incarnation, the Trinity was involved. The Father sent the angel to Mary. And through the power of the Spirit, Mary will conceive and bear the Son of God. There's a unity, there's a communion, there's a working together of these three persons. None works in isolation, even at crucifixion. The Son was crucified. The Father was present. The Son gave his Spirit. That's in John's Gospel. John's account of the crucifixion. And this, like I said, is talking about how God manifests himself. Yes, this is a mystery. And as a mystery, we cannot fully understand it. But God, communicating himself to humanity, reveals himself in the pages of the scriptures, as well as in nature. And Jesus Christ becomes the fullness of divine revelation, revealing God, revealing himself, revealing promise in the Holy Spirit. And it was the story of St. Augustine that tells us, or that with which we know that this is a mystery that we cannot fully understand. Augustine wanted to understand the mystery of the Trinity and went off to the seashore to contemplate the Trinity. And there he saw this little boy who has dug a hole with his finger on the seashore. And I was using a shell to fetch water from the sea and pour into the hole he has made with his finger. And this captivated Augustine, and Augustine observed keenly, with interest. At the time he went to the boy and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm trying to empty this water from the sea into this hole." And Augustine said, "That's a foolish thing to do." And the boy said, "That's also a foolish thing to try, thinking that you can contemplate and understand fully the mystery of God." And the little boy disappeared. That notwithstanding, we cannot use our finite intellect to comprehend fully an infinite God. But God, in His generosity, in His love for us, willing and wishing us to relate with Him, and there's no way we can relate with Him unless we know Him, has revealed Himself, and most practically in the person of Jesus Christ, whom St. Paul tells us to have seen His image of the invisible God. And Jesus tells us to have seen me is to have seen the Father, because the Father and I are one. They are not three gods. It is one God dwelling. One God in three persons, dwelling in unity, undivided, of one substance, of one essence, of one nature. So the revelation of God, of Himself to us, is in His desire for us to enter into communion. God is a community of three persons, and this has an important implication for us. Called to dwell, to share in the communion of God. Called to dwell in unity. So the Holy Trinity, first and foremost, must be honored as God, worshipped and glorified. In their relationship, they bring us the good life of the Trinity for our own salvation, for our own well-being, for the salvation of the world. Out of love, God created out of love, redeemed out of love, and sanctifies, purifies us. The Holy Spirit keeps giving us that sanctifying grace, nourishing us. It is important to know that God is complete in Himself. God is not in need of humanity, but has created out of love, redeemed us, and wants us to share in that divine life, in that communion, first and foremost, with God, in that love. And then express in our relationship with others. So this brings the sentiment of thanksgiving, of gratitude. But this also goes with responsibility, with duty, to recreate this in our relationship with others. The Holy Spirit has been given to us the bond of love, the bond of communion. Elizabeth of the Trinity tells us that the Spirit, the Trinity, dwells within us. And if the Spirit dwells within us, then we become temples of the Trinity. And temples of the Trinity, images of God, we are called to share that communion. So this is the challenge that we have today. This is the invitation, this is the call to know who we are in God and what God has done for us and the implications of this, to live it out, to begin to live in unity. So this love, this communion, this unity that exists among the three persons of the Trinity must be made visible in our own relationship, in our own lives. What we celebrate today, the Trinity, challenges our tendencies to live a life of individualism. It does a grievous blow to our own life of independence, our quest for autonomy. We are interdependent on one another. The three persons are one in substance and united in activities. The only difference or distinction is that of relationship. The Father is Father in relationship, in relation to the Son. The Son is a Son in relation to the Father and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. Yet they are one. Of course, if we live harmoniously, having the good of others in mind, as the Trinity, the persons of the Trinity do, then we live more peacefully. We live in unity. We work for the good of others. This is not an easy task, especially in our society today. But it's not an impossibility. If we invite God and allow God to always guide us and always be conscious of this vocation of ours, this invitation to live as the persons of the Trinity, knowing that we have been incorporated into the divine life and understanding the implications of that in our own lives, relating with others. We are created to relate, to be in communion as human beings, and more especially as Christians that have been invited to live the life of Christ. So as we celebrate the Trinity today, you are invited, we are invited to replicate in our lives the communion among the persons of the Trinity, working for the good of others. There's nothing that the persons of the Trinity did independent of others. Let us work for unity. Let us make for communion. Let us work for peace in appreciation of this invitation to share in the life of the Trinity.